Good morning, everybody. My name's Will Schmear. Welcome back to another episode of the Lovable Survivor podcast. This week in episode 28, we're going to be talking about pushback and taking back control or taking control of your recovery journey. Now, this is definitely a multifaceted podcast episode. There are many takes on this. I just want to give you some things to think about, some things to chew on. Everybody's going to be at a different place in their recovery journey. And I'll be honest, not everybody is the loudmouth, 6'8", 325-pound guy that I am. And I know that I've struggled with this at times because I'm not such a people pleaser, but I definitely like to kind of, strangely enough, follow the rules, and I like to listen to other people. And I think, we'll dive into that today, what that really means. But I generally feel with that during my recovery, especially in the beginning, I needed to listen to other people because I knew that I was in a place, I had gotten to a place by not listening to people. And everybody, again, is going to have a different opinion here, a different take, a different journey. But again, this episode 28 of the podcast is really about taking control, thinking things through, slowing down, because ultimately recovery, if you're a survivor, it's difficult. If you're a family member, it's difficult. If you're a therapist, you know how difficult it is for the patients. It's a whole thing. It's a collaborative process. I think the more we can work together, whether that's survivor to survivor, family member to survivor, caregiver, caretaker to survivor, the various forms of communication between parties, it's just a lot. And so, I want to help. The goal of this episode is to really help you get a sense of where you're at, what you want to change, if anything. Some tips on taking control, empowering you to take control of your journey, because I think what it really boils down to is during the stroke recovery journey, there's kind of three options. There's either you as a survivor take control, and in this case, betting on yourself and really figuring it out. The second option is letting somebody else take control, which, I think in the beginning is actually a very necessary step before you're, depending on what situation you're in post-stroke, you may not be ready to take control. So there is, I think somebody else taking control and leading the charge for you on your behalf at the beginning is something that is super important and often necessary. Especially if you have a lot of deficits, if you have cognitive issues, if you have aphasia, apraxia, any speech difficulty, so many things. It's difficult. And lastly, if you don't take control or somebody in your life doesn't take control, somebody's going to take control for you, and you may not like how that goes. And ultimately, I guess there's kind of four options, because there's the last option is really nothing changes if nothing changes. And now, although that sounds cliche as hell, you deserve answers. You deserve a fighting chance if you want it. Unfortunately, not everybody does. But I think if you're watching this episode or these podcasts, listening to these podcasts, watching these podcasts now on YouTube, by the way, if you're watching this, you want to make a change. You may not be in a place to make the changes that you want to make, but that's the goal of this podcast, is to help you know that things are difficult, to encourage you to keep going, and to realize you're not alone. It's a very difficult process. Often only other survivors really, truly understand it. I talked to a friend who's a survivor this week, and I think she and I had different strokes, different journeys, different stories, different things going on in our lives at the time of our stroke. So our paths are a little different, but we're both, we're both under 50. So that's already puts us in a unique category and position. But yeah, I think taking control means different things for different people at different times. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, you may not be able to the way you want to, so you may need some help. And really, the key points in this episode about pushback and taking back control are, we'll start at the beginning. I think a lot of us, we go into therapy with the hopes that doctors and therapists and your team that you're working with are going to have the answers. And very often they may have the answers. They may have exactly what you need because you may have a very textbook story. However, with stroke, there are so many unique parts to the equation that not everybody knows what's going on inside your head. Not everybody knows, they may, often I think physical therapists are taking sort of their best collaborative effort approach, and they're taking sort of the answers that they know to be the most generalized and most typical. And they're not doing that to be out of malice or anything. They're just doing it because they're kind of seeing where you're at, what you maybe specifically need to work on. And the reason I say pushback is because I know at times for me, there have been things that I've been working on with therapy, my therapy teams, where I'm just like, I don't think this is necessary. This seems rather difficult for where I'm at. And, and then I evaluate it with my team. I'll give you a good example. I think I've said this a million times, but walking backwards, very early on, once I started walking, was not a priority for me. Now, I know walking backwards has a lot of benefits, but very early on, I was being a little short-sighted in the benefits of walking backwards because I was like, I never walk backwards. I'm 6'8", 325 pounds. Walking backwards is, let's just say what it is. It's dumb. For somebody my size, it just didn't seem like something I needed, but really practicing backwards walking in a therapy setting is strengthening some other muscles. So again, that was something I kind of pushed back on in the beginning. I later saw the benefits of that. And I think, when you're working with your therapy team, I'm sorry, before we go on, I'm going to tell you right now, I lost the piercing here the other day, so I had to put in a temporary one. And it's very long. And so that's why I'm talking a little bit funny this episode during the recording, because I do not have a new one yet. It is due to arrive, or I may go get another one later this weekend. Anyways, so back to what I was talking about. Yeah. Walking backwards for me was a weird thing. I didn't see the benefits early on, so I did push back. And, I think there are times where I push back and I'm definitely wind up being wrong and going back and saying, yeah, maybe I was wrong there. And my therapy team is very good. I'm very honest with them about where I'm at, what's going on. I probably overshare with them. But I'm also doing this because I want to tell them everything going on so that we can make the best possible decisions with every therapy appointment, with every interaction that we have. Because, as a younger survivor, I'm trying to get better. I wouldn't say more quickly, but I'm just trying to be efficient. And depending on where you live in the world, what stage you're at in your recovery, you might be further along, you might not have these issues, but it is sometimes, at least here in the United States, we're only covered X amount of therapy visits per year with certain insurances. Some are better than others. It really is all over the map, unfortunately. So I try to be efficient because there's a lot of time I'm spending in therapy and a lot of time I'm working out. So it's time to work and run my businesses and spend with my family. It's all very sort of regimented and limited. It doesn't seem regimented, but it is, and is segmented in a way that works best for me and my family. But that's been a very long journey and continues to be a lot of work. Like, I have a day that I like to record, do these episodes, do all these things. I like to do work at a certain time as a certain day. I try to be consistent with things. I try to block things off so that when things need to be moved around or rejiggered for the week, those blocks of time can be moved around in a fashion that works for me. And that's part of taking back control too, is it's not just about therapy. It's about your entire life and what works for you as a survivor. So again, I do want to encourage everybody. I would never say don't listen to your team. I'm just saying, listen. Here's my approach. You could take from it what you like. My recommendation, and this is what I do. I always listen to my therapy team. I'm very open to their suggestions. I very rarely push back in the beginning. And that's because they are, generally speaking, the experts. They see the most common things. They see more patients than I talk to. So generally speaking, they're going to have the best information. They're either staying up to date with ongoing education. They may be going to conferences. They may be hearing different things within their community, different therapy bubbles, so to speak, for lack of a better term, in their industry. And the reason, again, I say to push back sometimes is that not everything works for everybody. I do think you try it, you test it, you see how it goes, you give it a time frame. And if you're not seeing those improvements, then you start to ask questions, right? Like, okay, I listened. I'm trying this thing. I'm trying these things that we discussed, that we agreed to work on. I'm kind of doing the work, but I'm not seeing the results. And sometimes it's just a matter of time. That's fair. Sometimes it may be something that somebody in your therapy team or even yourself, you may not have recognized, and there may be a little, I guess, a hiccup or like a bump in the road. So then you want to reevaluate. You want to see, okay, I'm going to keep working on this, but what's another option? What else can I try? What else can I do? Is there another method? Am I doing this right? A lot of questions can be asked. And I think asking questions, I'm saying pushback, but what I really mean is ask questions. Like, just be honest and ask those questions. Am I doing it wrong? Okay, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Is there another option? Is there another way? Can I do 85% of this exercise, but maybe I'm doing one little piece wrong? And is that one piece that I'm maybe doing incorrectly? Can I either adjust that? Or is that why this entire exercise is not working? Because we all know the 80-20 rule. You can do something 80% and you're most of the way there, but that last 20% is really the part that is key. It might be that. And I think one of the big things to come of this is that therapists are using the best information they have at the time to help you, and everybody's unique situation. There are certainly times when somebody's going to come along with something that nobody thought of. Another example, I'm a stroke survivor starting at age 37. I'm now 40, but I'm now a stroke survivor, a young stroke survivor with MS. That's pretty rare. That's not a common theme that you hear. And I know this because I don't think I've yet to meet another stroke survivor with MS. So I know they exist. I'm sure of it. I know one that I believe is on Twitter or X. That's one out of thousands. Now, again, I'm sure there's more than me, of course, and more than that other individual, but there might be something related to MS that nobody on your therapy team has run into before. And so that means you need to work with them to see, is there another option? Is there somebody they know in their circles that they might be able to bring in and ask a question to? Do they know somebody who knows somebody? And it's also an opportunity for your therapy team, or really anybody that you're working with, to learn and grow. Because if you have it, yeah, it might be a rare case, but they may run into it again throughout their careers. So don't be afraid to kind of push back and question your team, and hopefully they're not giving you any issues with it. But I think it is an opportunity for everybody to learn and grow and get out of these silos of therapy and generalized information. Take with that what you will, but I think especially if you're somebody who's working in therapy fields and you're not necessarily a survivor, this is a good opportunity to learn from experiences, to learn from your survivors, because ultimately that's just going to make you and your team a stronger, better team to help more and more people. And I think at the end of the day, people who go into therapy, I don't know everybody's reason, but it's generally to help patients recover. And for those that are wanting to recover, you have to ask those questions in order to get better for you, to get to where you want to be, so that you can live the life you always wanted, you always dreamt of, you were on the path to achieving. And those goals may change when you have a stroke or major life event, but, no reason you can't get back on the horse, so to speak, and get back on track. Easier said than done. Bad days, tough days. We all have them. We all go through them. And I think that's why pushing back, even on yourself as a survivor, is critically important, because ultimately it does come down to you. You want to have a good life. You want to have goals that you're going after and achieving. And so you have to remind yourself daily, this sounds corny, but get up and win the day. You can certainly take a day off if you're tired, if you're not feeling well, do that, take care of your health, but also ask yourself, is there something I can do to, if you need a slower day, you can take a slower day, right? Like winning every day doesn't mean you absolutely have to go out and crush it every day, but it does, I think generally speaking, you get up and you do some things, you feel better. Even if you don't feel good to start the day, you will feel better, even if you achieve a small thing. Question came up this week in a group I'm in where somebody was like waiting around for a thing and a delivery. And I was just like, and they're like, what do you do when a day goes awry? And I think to myself, what do I do when a day goes awry? Well, I'm getting better at it. I'm not perfect at it, but I always have like a list of small wins that I can pick up. So if I have a crazy day, I'll give you an example. I had a crazy day this past Tuesday. We had a hurricane coming in town very quickly. All of a sudden, wasn't sure where it was going to go, where it was going to land. I knew kind of early on that we were on the correct side for a change. So I knew it wasn't going to be too bad. But, as things progress and change, you get a little nervous. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I prepare a little more? So there was a lot of running around on Tuesday. I already had some doctor's appointments. I had already had some therapy appointments on Monday. I had another therapy appointment on Tuesday. Wound up getting a last minute doctor's appointment because somebody canceled that day. So I was running around like crazy on Tuesday. And that definitely knocked me off my schedule. But again, I've got systems for me in place that there's still things that I get done so that I don't feel like the day is a waste. And I know I'm a little off track here, but I think this happens with a lot of survivors. And it's a little different than pushing back. But, when you think about your life and your recovery, for me, it's top priority. So when things do go wrong, even in recovery, it's a setback, and how you manage those setbacks and how you handle them and how you deal with them can be a process to learn, can be a process to overcome. It's tricky, and it's going to be different for everybody. You just need to figure out what works best for you. How do you want to handle it in terms of your family? How do you want to handle it in terms of your recovery? If you're still working, how do you handle it with work? For me, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a little more flexible, but I think for me, sometimes it's almost as harder when you have that flexibility to stay on track versus something like a 9-to-5 or something, working a similar schedule. Sometimes that may be easier, and you may find that for your case that it is easier to work for somebody else. Everybody's got a different take on that. I think you have to make the decision that what feels right to you at the time, and it could absolutely change. And so again, just to kind of go back there, when it comes to therapy and doctors, I do recommend that you ask questions. I think because I've run into this a lot with medical professionals, specifically doctors. They'd run, and it depends what doctor for what thing, of course, but as a stroke survivor, we know there are unique challenges. I also have MS, so my neurologist is acutely aware of my issues that may arise for me with MS and stroke recovery, but like my primary care, is not as familiar. And so sometimes I will push back or I will ask questions, and it's just to make sure that I'm ultimately getting what answers are best for me at the time. And I think a big thing for me sometimes with medical professionals in general is that they are very smart. I'm not denying that. They have gone to school. They're highly educated. They couldn't possibly know every scenario with every patient. You think how many patients they must see and how widely and vastly different the symptoms and issues they're going through at that particular patient are. You just really, at least I want to make sure that I'm getting the absolute best answers and that we're working through it together. And sometimes I feel like they brush things off and I just keep hammering away. I won't leave until I feel like they've really listened. And you have to make those decisions for yourself. But I think don't be afraid to push back. As a survivor, we've gone through a lot of things. You've overcome a stroke or a major medical life event or a brain injury. We tend to say yes and want to get on with our days. And I think, you just have to be mindful of those things. Again, because beating a dead horse here, but every stroke is unique and it's just, and every situation is unique. So you need to really balance that and, remember that you deserve answers like everybody else. And ultimately, sometimes with doctors, I like when I'll give you another example. I've had a thing recently where it's like, I've done everything this particular doctor has told me to do, has asked me to do throughout the time we've been working together. And it's just, there's this thing that is lingering that is like very frustrating to me because I've done absolutely everything I can think of. I've researched, I've listened, I've asked questions, and it's just like, I'm at the point where I'm putting my hands up in the air and being like, I don't know what to do. And honestly, I'm not sure that they know what to do. And she was trying to give me answers the other day, and I'm just like, it'd be okay if you just say, I don't really know anymore. Well, like you have tried everything. And I guess we kind of worked on an agreement where like, we're just going to keep trying these things. And maybe I need to push back next week myself when I go back and see her, because it's okay if she doesn't know. I actually appreciate when somebody says, I don't know the answer. We've tried all these things. We both agreed to these plans. And I'll tell you, this is an issue that I have that has been going on longer than my stroke. It has nothing to do with my stroke, believe it or not. I think part of the issue is MS and healing. I don't know if it's Eliquis related because I'm on blood thinners from the stroke still, even though I'm trying like hell to get off them. Really, I'm on them now very preventatively. I don't think I need to be on them. But I wonder, like, what is the thing that is preventing this lingering thing from really just being done and done? At first they told me to walk more and run more. And they were telling me these things when I was in the wheelchair. Now I'm walking and running. I'm running a half marathon a day. I never thought I'd be a runner, and I'm a full-time runner on top of my full-time entrepreneur, businesses. And so I've taken as much control as I could take. And it's frustrating to be in this place. So I can only imagine if you have a similar story, how frustrating it can be. And I am pushing back because I'm, I don't know where else to turn at this point. And so, we're going to try some more things. I'm in agreement with that. I don't think we stop trying. I need a better answer longer term. Like I will absolutely try these things for the short term. But ultimately, there needs to be a longer term solution, because as much as I love seeing this team and this staff and these people, this team that I work with here in Florida, I would love to not be seeing them every week for going into year 4. And this thing that has come back into my life was I didn't need, it's a thing on my leg. And so it healed up last year, finally, after 2.5 years, almost 3 at that point. It closed up. I don't know what happened over this summer. It sort of reopened, and my guess is probably infection, but I'm not a doctor. I don't really know. And it's a thing on my ankle. It's a little thing, but it's just very annoying because it's like the bruise. It's like imagine a bruise that won't heal. It's just there. It's, it's just a thing, and I want it to go away. And I've tried so many things over the last couple of years. I've changed my entire lifestyle. Like if there's something I'm eating, I'd love to take it off the plate. If there's something I need to be doing that I'm not doing, which is beyond running and walking and like exercising, wearing compression and doing all these things. Yeah, I'm just at the point where I want an answer like everybody else. My thing is, if I get an answer and I don't do what's being asked, then it's on me, right? But if I'm doing everything that's being asked and we're still not getting to the resolution, that's when things become difficult. And that's when I start pushing back. And really, that is the essence of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about pushing back. But I also think my story of walking backwards was fairly relevant because sometimes you're just not in a place you're not ready. You're not seeing the benefits. And sometimes it may be that you just didn't put enough work in and you need to put more work in. Okay, fair enough. So I think, again, that goes back to some of the tips that I have for empowering your journey, which is asking for other options, asking for additional help, speaking to other people who have been through what you've been through, and really finding those alternatives. And don't be afraid to go outside the norm. We get, as a society, I'm very different. I don't put up with a lot of stuff, but that is unique to me. Not everybody's as comfortable, but I think you owe it to yourself to feel empowered to ask those questions, push back as you see fit and as you feel comfortable. Not everybody's going to go from 0 to 100 like me in 10 minutes. It takes practice. It takes time. Do what's comfortable for you, because ultimately it's your recovery. You do owe it to yourself to get those answers. So, and really, instead of seeing it as pushback, see it as a collaborative process. That's really what it is, because you're just asking questions to help make them better and ultimately get you better and get you to where you want to be, because it's a very difficult process. So just know, every day there's these challenges. You're gonna have hiccups. You're gonna have triumphs. Celebrate those wins. You don't have to celebrate it on social media. You can celebrate it with friends. Celebrate it with your family. Whatever works for you. Just as a survivor, it also helps to ask people who are non-survivors who may be going through similar frustrations in life. I just think it's another perspective on. Because sometimes as survivors, we only want to talk to other survivors because we think only they understand. And I think that's true in a lot of cases, but, consider alternatives. Just know that life can be frustrating for anybody on any day, whether you're a parent, whether you're not a parent, whether you're just, an animal parent, it's no different really. The same similar frustrations. It may not be one-to-one, but yeah. And those are just, some things to think about with alternatives. And I guess one of the last things I'll say before we kind of wrap up this episode, I think it's really important to remain objective and adapt. Sometimes as a society, I think we get caught up in what everybody else is doing. I know I do this. It's especially tricky as a survivor, working as an entrepreneur, doing different things. I see different people on social media doing different things with their businesses. And I've worked through it and I'm still working through it every day. There are things I want to do better. There are things I can do better. I think the reason I've gone to video and utilized more technology and apps for talking is because it's significantly easier than typing. Would I love to just write all day? Absolutely. But I enjoy being on video, and I think I've removed some of that friction that I had with video, making clips and doing things like that. I think the next step for me as a business owner and trying to empower other survivors and really build this podcast and build this channel for YouTube is, incorporating some help, whether it's contractors. It's very difficult as a solopreneur who is a stroke survivor to be doing all these things. But I like pushing myself. I like challenging myself. But I do think we're getting close to the point where I start to focus on building the show, building the audience, and doing less of the editing, less of the putting together of things. And that's the reason I'm sharing this is, one, to kind of give you a sneak peek behind the scenes, so to speak, but also just sharing that these are challenges we face as stroke survivors. Other people don't realize just how hard it is, and that is applicable to any part of life as a survivor, whether you're a business owner or just somebody going about their day and working through, therapy and recovery. And, I think it's important to, I guess that's a good example I'm trying to share of, collaboration with others, and really, ultimately it's up to you, but you probably do and will need help along the way. Again, whatever phase of the journey you're in. So yeah, that's just some things to think about. I'm trying to think. There's other things. Like I said, there are going to be days that are tougher, and you don't have to win every day with the utmost enthusiasm and be on fire. But managing expectations, finding help from either mental health professionals or other therapy, members of your community, finding a community. I keep talking about building survivor science in the community. And one of the things I struggle with still is it is difficult to find other survivors on social media for many reasons. One, generally, stroke survivors are older. They may be less technologically savvy. There are also stroke survivors. I mean, I'm thinking about my own journey. I couldn't even use the phone for it took me several months in the beginning to be able to even use my phone properly without either dropping it or holding it. So typing can be difficult. Again, it's going to be different for everybody. I still hate my handwriting, and I don't want to say I had beautiful handwriting back in the day, but I had pretty good handwriting for a guy, who generally men get a lot of crap for their handwriting, but I had nice handwriting. I used to love to draw. I went to school for architecture at University of Miami. We learned to draw by hand. And so that's something that I haven't gotten back to, and again, always goes back to priorities, and you have to adapt and shift to what is the focus of the week? What is the focus of the month? What is the focus of the year? What do you feel like you want to work on the most? There's different strategies and coping mechanisms. And, you have to kind of figure it out. But building that support network to kind of get to these goals and to work on yourself, to ask those hard questions of medical professionals, and to ask the hard questions of yourself, because, again, at the end of the day, this is my take. I'm going to bet on myself every single time, but not everybody feels the same way. Not everybody's able to bet on themselves. So you may have to ask somebody to help step in, like a caregiver, caretaker, to be your liaison to asking the tough questions. And hopefully, though, they will ask those tough questions. I got lucky. My sisters and my wife and my brother-in-law, everybody on my team at the time, they pushed, they fought on my behalf. They asked the questions. It can be tough. You want to do it respectfully, and there's a way to do it, especially when you're in, let's say, a hospital setting or an inpatient setting. You don't want to be rude or things like that, but I think there's a way to do it fairly and politely. And I think, saying please and thank you goes a long way. Everybody gets frustrated. Emotions are heightened in these situations. But if you kind of do the best you can as a team, as a caregiver, caretaker, family member, even as a survivor yourself. Acting with kindness and gratitude and sort of a thankfulness, and just honestly, humor is a big thing. I mean, the reason this podcast is called Lovable Survivors, because I'm a pretty big lovable guy, but I like to have fun. But I also like to ask the tough questions. And I think find that middle ground, right, where you have one foot on the safe side and one foot on the side of here's the safe side, and here's I want to push it a little bit. I got one foot on both sides. And I think finding that sort of center line and riding that line is really the sweet spot to, I don't want to say it's the key or the answer, but I think riding that sweet spot is important in recovery. At any step, you want and need to be safe, but you also want to know, where can I push? Because if you don't push, you're definitely not getting better. And again, if you don't take control, eventually somebody else will take control. And if you're okay with it, that's okay. And if you feel like you need that at a certain point, that's okay too. And then you can, when you feel ready to take control, take back the reins, and don't be afraid to push back there either. So there's a lot to this. It's not easy. I know it's easier said than done. I feel key. I'm just built for this. Not everybody is. And I do understand that. So please, there is sort of an art and a science to pushing back, and take my points here today and use what you can and do things wisely, carefully, think things through, be objective. That's really what I mean here is be objective when you're asking these questions, when you're pushing back. I push back with a little humor, and I always refer back to the thing I was talking about earlier with walking backwards and telling my therapist, listen, I know you're probably right on this, but walking backwards just seems stupid to me at this point. There seems like no good reason, and she kind of eventually got me to flip on that, where it's okay, yes, in theory, walking backwards is dumb and you're probably not doing it, but here's what it's doing for you, which is building some strength and some muscles that are weaker for you that will ultimately help you walk better and faster forwards. Perfect. That's all I needed to hear. I just wanted I needed to hear the reason, because I knew it was something more than walking backwards, because I know nobody really walks backwards around their house, right? That's not a functional thing per se. That's all I mean. Anyways, like I said, everybody taking control of your recovery is a very big topic. It's something we cover every week on this podcast. You deserve answers like everybody else. I want to assure you that everybody is, generally speaking, that I've run into on my therapy teams and my situations. Maybe one time out of 100, I've run into somebody, a medical professional that was, but I'll take that. I'll take 99 out of 100 being solid people, right? And even the ones that I at first thought were maybe a little iffy, turns out they were right. I wasn't ready to hear it the way they were presenting it. That's not on them. That's not even on me as a survivor. It's just sometimes we're just not ready to hear the things that we need to hear. And that's okay too. Just know you can do it. You're capable of doing it. And, pushing back will only ultimately help you take back control of your recovery. And again, I say take back, but for some, it's just taking control from the get-go, because you may be in a better space. For some of you may need help like I did in the beginning. But now I'm taking back control. And it's not because I'm a control freak. It's just because ultimately I now see the responsibility is on me, and ultimately that is going to lead me to the path and the desired outcome. And that may be something I'm chasing till the end of time, if I'm being honest. I mean, I think that's something I've had to be comfortable with now as a survivor, 3.5 years in. This December will be 4 years. I've come a long way, and I can appreciate the hard work that I put in. I still have a ways to go. I probably will be saying I'm 85% better for the rest of my life. I don't think I'll ever get to 100%, but that's fine. I'm okay with that now. I feel good about the things I'm doing. I feel good about the things I want to improve. And hopefully, ultimately, you do too. So anyways, I think that's enough carrying on about taking back control. I think you get the general idea. If you need help, if you need support, reach out to the podcast at lovablesurvivor.com. Hit me up on the socials. I'm doing more TikTok. I'm doing more Instagram. I'm a little iffy on Twitter these days. I'm there, but I'm not as there. I think I want to get back into LinkedIn. But really, if you want to talk to me personally, hub.lovablesurvivor.com. Definitely book some time. Couple of free spots, couple of paid spots every week, every month, whatever you got, whatever I can do to help, let me know. Questions, comments, personal reflections. I just know this isn't easy, and I'm just reminded about it every single week when I talk to survivors, just how hard it is. And, whatever way I can help support, whether it's just continuing to make videos and you watch me from afar and we never speak, I hope that I inspire you. I show up here sweaty every week, mostly because I'm insane and I go running before I record these, and I don't feel like showering and changing 15 times a day because I'm going to go back out later today and run after some work. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I should also mention that I do have multiple hoodies of the same color, of the same brand. So when you see me in this, I have 75 hoodies, which is an astronomical number for somebody that lives in Florida. I wear a hoodie every single day. That is my jam. So your hoodies and hats is what you're always seeing. That is it's almost like I'm Bart Simpson in the night. Well, he's still on. Yeah, it's almost like I have a uniform that I always wear the same deal. So that's never going to change. Anyways, enough about me. Those are some ways you could reach out. Let's see, what am I doing this week? Things I want to talk about that I'm really enjoying is podcast-wise is Whiskey Ginger. I think I talked about it last week. Andrew Santino. Really enjoy his podcast. Bad Friends with him and Bobby is also a good one. I will tell you, I'm on a big Theo Von kick. And if you are familiar or unfamiliar with Theo Von, or maybe you are familiar with Theo, or maybe you're like me and you kind of forgot about Theo for a while. He used to be on MTV Road Rules, Real World Challenges, I think back in the 2000s. Really funny guy, really good comic. Really smart, really insightful. I really enjoy his podcast. He has comedians on, fellow comedians, but he also has other interesting guests. I was watching an episode last night with Theo Von and Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, for those who don't know, I believe he's a psychologist and author. He's written a couple books. I just really enjoy a good podcast to watch kind of in the background while I'm working sometimes. I don't necessarily agree with all his thoughts and his writings and his teachings, but I really enjoy somebody who is putting thought into what they're doing and sharing it with the world. I don't have to agree with it, and you don't either. And honestly, he has a lot of good points. Some are different than others. Some are things that I'm not, they lean differently than I would lean, but that's okay. I think that is becoming kind of a lost thing in this world, is being able to objectively listen to somebody else's words. And there is always a fine line between an opinion and subjective thought. But yeah, it was just an interesting episode. You can watch it, you cannot. It's just something I recommend. And I would say, I know I've been talking a lot about DJing and getting into DJing and music production the last couple of weeks. That is going well. I just recorded my first set last Friday night randomly. It was not a fully fleshed out set. I'm thinking about posting it on socials just so it's learning and building in public. And honestly, I just recorded it to try to get the recording down, because sometimes with a Mac, recording the sound from it's a whole process to record. It's not as easy as it sounds on a Mac. So I was testing it and I just kind of got into a flow. I didn't have everything fleshed out. I wasn't trying to build a playlist and a set necessarily, but I was just kind of winging it, and I recorded it. And so there's some bumps and bruises on my recording, but I kind of like it. I feel like the energy is right. I think I can tell you right now, DJing is fun. I run a lot, so I would tell a lot of times I have so many screenshots of songs. I've downloaded music. I've got it all put together. It's a lot of fun for me. It's a nice new hobby. Something, again, I thought I wouldn't get back into at age 40. But it's a lot of fun, and I'm learning a ton. And, I think at 40, there are things that I didn't know at 20. And I think I said this last week too. At 20, I was very interested in going to the clubs and being a part of the club scene, but not necessarily the DJ. Now, I have no interest in going to the clubs necessarily as a patron, and no longer interested in drinking and smoking, all those things. But I am interested in still being a part of it, and DJing as a way to be a part of the club without being a part of the club. And I think also, what I'm learning is that you can do it at any age. And I've seen that before. There are DJs now that are in their 50s and 60s absolutely killing it. And I think, as you get older, you start to see things differently. And it's like, yeah, I just have an appreciation for the music. I have a vast knowledge now of, 25 years of EDM and house music and electronic music. And so there are songs that I love from back in the day, and, I kind of remix those and mix those with new ones. And it's just a vibe. A lot of fun. Anyways, and lastly, these episodes are I'm starting to roll them out to YouTube. I'm starting to make the videos. It is a little bit of a process, but I'm figuring it out. I'm getting it down, seeing what I like, what I don't like, where I need to trim the fat. Anyways, go check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Lovable Survivor. Go subscribe, check it out. I'm going to post the audio, continue to post the audio there, but you can also watch the video if that's your jam, if you like watching me as a talking head. I know this episode I've been a little quiet, but yeah, I don't know. I just had a lot of fun. I like filming it. I think we're going to get better as time goes on. That is the goal of anything in life. So, and I just want to show you my face. And so you see me sweating every week. You know that I'm committed to building the best version of me, and I'm not just some dummy talking out my ass about taking control. I've really tried to take control of my stroke. I hope to inspire others to do the same. I hope to help people that are looking for that help, because God knows I was looking for that help 4 years ago when I first had my stroke. I had nowhere to turn, limited resources on YouTube. It's hard. I don't think there are a lot of survivors that are necessarily wanting to or able to. And so I do feel a sense of, I don't want to say duty, but I guess a duty to share my story with others so they know they're not alone, and they know they can fight back, and they know they can get to where they want to be with time. So yeah, anyways, I think I'll leave it there for episode 28 of the Lovable Survivor podcast, and bye for now.